you're there. I went to college that fall after registering, and a friend of mine took me up to my first Quaker meeting, which happened to be on campus at the time. And I felt like that was it. That part of the hunt for me was over. Completely, solidly, forever over. And now I just had the rest of my life to figure out what it was I was going to do about that. I came back, and it just turned out that my freshman English teacher, her husband, and a few other actual long-time Quakers had re-begun West Falmouth meeting full-time as an unprogrammed meeting, which was about a little more later. So I walked into Quakerism in upstate New York, and then I came home, and lo and behold, there was West Falmouth meeting, alive and well, and all 6 of us sitting around wondering how we're going to afford this year-round experience. So that's how I came to Quakerism. You have to understand one other thing for me, and that is that I come from a non-religious household, second generation. My father was a scientist, an ecologist. My mother was a classicist. The sister nearest to me, 1 year younger than me, is a rabbi. My oldest sister married a non-practicing Catholic, and my youngest sister hung out with the Episcopalians so she could sing with Pat Brown. The 2 in the middle, I don't know what happened or why, but you'll hear about the experience of being a friend and the sort of consequences of that discovery from the rest of the morning.
Well, good morning. I'm going to read some remarks that I wrote yesterday, because I'm not as eloquent in spontaneous speaking as our friend here. I came from a country town in western Virginia, and there I was immersed in the nearly totally fundamentalist outlook of the town. We had 3 options philosophically: the Baptist Church, the Methodist Church, and those who were daring enough to attend an integrated congregation, the Catholic Church. And my mother was a very devout Baptist, and so that's the upbringing that I had. And then I went away to college, and I found out that it wasn't uncommon for people to be very antagonistic to the traditional canonical dogma of the church. And I was very confused, but I still wanted to somehow or another find a way to live by the golden rule. When I left college, I ended up in Princeton, New Jersey, and I became a Unitarian. And then after Carolyn and I became married, we went to Concord, Massachusetts, and joined the Unitarian Church there, and became disillusioned with it during the Vietnam War, when the members of the congregation were so, well, they earned their living by working at Raytheon in Bedford, and they built missiles and things like that, and the ministry of the church was very much against that. So we said, we've got to get out of here. We remembered that my college physics professor was a Quaker, and Carolyn, while she was still in college and I was in grad school, spent a lot of time with them. So why don't we go down to Cambridge Friends meeting and try that out? And we've been Quakers ever since. And I think that's about all I'm going to say now, because we have opportunity to say more later.
And I'm Molly Cornell. My first introduction to Quakers was as a teenager. I attended a Quaker boarding school, and for 3 years I was totally immersed in Quaker culture. Our teachers were friends. Many of my classmates were from Quaker families. The whole school community was Quaker. And I've got to say, I was a teenager at the time. I could understand. I rebelled against whatever the grown-ups thought was a good idea. I did not fully appreciate the impact that was having, that had on my life. I was, smarty pants. I left there, didn't have anything to do with Quakers after that, until I was in my 30s and raising a child, I was married, and my husband had been involved with Quakers through social action, through the war, military resistance. And I just felt there was some dimension of my life that was missing. And I remembered how much I really loved that hour of quiet worship that we had twice a week at my school, midweek and Sundays. And I just longed for it. I just wanted that. And as some people say, the Spirit was calling you, Molly. Come on. So I started attending, we all as a family started attending a Quaker meeting in Langley, what was in Virginia, and became members and moved up here. And I've been a member of the Religious Society of Friends for over 40 years. It just, so a seed was planted way back then by being among Quakers. So I'm going to be the first speaker, and I'd like to start with a statement that was written in 1761 by John Woolman. He was an American Quaker, and I just love this statement. It says, "There is a principle which is pure, placed in the human mind, which in different places and ages has had different names. However, it is pure and proceeds from God. It is deep and inward, confined to no form of religion nor excluded from any. Where the heart stands in perfect sincerity, in whomsoever this takes root and grows, of what nation soever they become brethren in the best sense of the expression." And this statement to me expresses the universal aspect of God, or Spirit, that is central to Quaker faith. That there is a living, dynamic, spiritual presence at work in the world, both within us and also outside of us. And that each person is endowed with a measure of this presence, or of the divine. And as a consequence, Quakers believe that all life is sacred and interconnected. So that's the really central principle of Quaker belief. This spiritual presence is often referred to as the light within, or the inner light, or inward light, or that of God. You may have heard that Quakers speak of that of God in every person. So Quakers endeavor to lead a life that values the worth of every person, and that answers to that of God in themselves and in others that they encounter. Quaker practice bears witness to this central theme, that by inward listening we are guided into a faithful living and a witness and action. And my colleagues here will speak more to that as we go. The Quaker testimonies are a distillation of Quaker faith and action over the many, many years. You will hear us, maybe us or some people speak of the testimonies. They aren't a set of beliefs. We don't have creeds or dogma, but they are guidelines to live by. Many of the testimonies overlap. We've already mentioned the testimony, the peace testimony. Quakers oppose and refuse to engage in war and violence. We recognize that peace isn't simply an absence of war. If the war stops but people are still starving, you don't have peace. You don't have peace. So in pursuit of a lasting and sustainable peace, Quakers will, instead of taking up arms, will seek to eliminate the root causes of violent conflict, such as poverty, exploitation, intolerance. Quakers hold that all people are equal in the eyes of the divine and have equal access to this inner light. This testimony of equality was reflected in early Quakers when women were recognized as ministers and given equal authority as the men. Quakers refused to use forms of address, taking off your hat or saying you instead of thee or thou, that recognized social distinction. In the old days especially, that got Quakers into a lot of trouble. We still get into trouble. The need to deal honestly with others and with oneself is a fundamental testimony of Friends. This testimony of integrity means speaking the truth to others, even to people in power. Friends don't take oaths when appearing in a court of law, rejecting the idea that there's one set of truth for the world and the other set of truth for the law. So Friends, instead of taking an oath or swearing on the Bible, when they go to court, they will affirm. That happened to me when I served in jury duty. I thought, my goodness, we're all supposed to swear to the Bible. And I just spoke to them on the side, and they were very nice. They said, sure, you can affirm. And so they took me aside, and I affirmed that I'd be telling the truth. At the heart of the testimony of simplicity is the practice of focusing on what really matters in life. For some, the emphasis is on the needs of the planet. For others, the focus is on letting go of attachments and accumulating a lot of material belongings. But for all of us, it means clearing all of the clutter that gets in the way of listening to that inward life. So a simplicity of life is just getting rid of whatever clutter is in your way. And those are just a few of the testimonies that define Quakers. And I know that through the messages that Larry is going to share and that Eric will share, they'll build on some of that. So I'll turn it over to them. Larry.
Okay. There's a saying that we sometimes say in meetings after vocal ministry, that friend speaks my mind. Since she said it all, I have to.
I didn't, I set you up. I was supposed to set you up.
In planning the talk, we said that each of us was going to have an emphasis, and the emphasis that I said I was going to speak to was continuing revelation, and just what that might mean. But first I have to say that the important thing for me is to find a way to be really honest with myself about what do I really believe, what am I sure about, and what can I say I'm unsure about. And the human brain has a real unique capacity for abstract concepts. One of the abstract concepts is the concept of God. That means something to everyone in here probably, but it probably means something different to everyone. I do not have what I call an operational way of defining what God is. I mean, like you go over to this corner of the town and you turn around and you look up there and there's God. No, it's not as simple as that. Supposedly God is able to do many wonderful things. But when I was a child, I said, well, where are these miracles and angels and things like that that they keep telling me he's done all these wonderful things? And I come after having studied physics for a number of years and worked in that area, to think that our view of the world has changed. That's the continuing revelation. There have been people learning science going all the way back to Aristotle and before and making discoveries. Around the 16th century, they began to look through things called telescopes for the first time and found that there were spots on the sun, spots on the planets, and that they wandered away from perfectly circular orbits. This ultimately destroyed the dogma that the Earth was the center of the universe. And that was a new revelation. So ultimately, we are now in the 21st century, and we realize that the universe is incomprehensibly immense. And we occupy hardly a speck in that universe. So where is the arrogance to think that we on this earth are the only living things in this universe and that God gives all his attention to us? Those are the kind of things I feel free to think about as a Quaker, because Quakers do not impose a dogma. It just wants you to believe that there is what Molly has expressed, something that's available to everyone, some kind of an inner voice or inner light that can tell you this is a better way to behave. And that's all I can say as to what I can concretely believe. There's this, as she gave a quotation from John Woolman, there's a quotation over the entrance to the Cambridge Friendly meeting. Walk cheerfully over the earth, over the world, seeking, answering that of God in everyone. Now, I think that there are two parts to religion. One is, what should you do? And the other is, why should you do it? So, the what you should do is you should walk cheerfully, and why you should do it, because there's that of God in everyone. Now, I don't know that, again, that everyone can agree on why they believe what they believe, but I just attempt to be sure that I'm honest with myself about what I really think and what, regardless of what anyone else thinks. And what I think is that it's a miracle that we are alive. Turns out that in physics you learn that there's something called quantum mechanics. If it were not quantum mechanics, there would not exist molecules. And there would not exist ways that these molecules could communicate with themselves and build larger and larger molecules that could pass along gene information from one generation to the next. I also believe that we have evolved from other animals with less capacity. I do not think that humans are the only ones that can experience joy. For example, we have a cat that communicates with us every day. So I think this is about the point of what I wanted to say, and I'll let Terry go on from there.
From the cat
No, joy.
to the mouse.
The message.
So why isn't everybody a Quaker then? It sounds so good. Sounds so contemporary, so modern. And there are a lot of reasons for that. But one of them is that Friends believe in a peculiar kind of worship. And that's what I'm supposed to talk to you briefly about, is worship and community. And worship is actually both the easiest thing in any religious occupation, any confession you can think of. Quaker worship is the easiest. Unfortunately, Quaker worship is also the hardest, because you're responsible. And it's a lot easier to read something or listen to somebody or all feel good together or give up some of that responsibility to somebody else for your relationship to the divine. And so Quakerism is not a big religion, it's a tiny religion, because it's too easy on the one hand. You just go in and you sit down. There's no minister, there's no program. And it's the most difficult on the other hand, because who's at fault, if anybody? Or who's responsible, if anybody is? So, my quote is, I'm going to read to you from basically the founder and organizer of the Society of Friends, George Fox. This is a heavily redacted book of some of his letters. In those days, you communicated by letter and broadside and speaking in public, that kind of thing. He wrote more than 1,100 letters. They went all over the world, wherever Quakers were, and he helped them do what they needed to do in worship, because there was going to be no leader except, as he would say, the living Christ. That's the leader. So you go into a Quaker meeting, you sit down, it's quiet, there's nobody at the head. There are people sitting in front, but nobody's leading it. There's only that internal God waiting for you and everybody who's with you. This is what George Fox had to say in letter number 10, written in 1652. Just this is a part of this letter. He could write short ones and long ones. This is short. Friends, this is 1652. Whatever you are addicted to, the tempter will come in that thing. When he can trouble you, then he gets advantage over you, and then you are gone. Stand still in that which is pure, after you see yourselves, and then mercy comes in. After you see your thoughts and the temptations, do not think, but submit. Then the power comes. Stand still in the light and submit to it, and the other will be hushed and gone. Then contentment comes. Walk happily. When temptations and troubles appear, sink down in that which is pure, and all will be hushed and fly away. Your strength is to stand still. Whatsoever you see yourselves addicted to, temptations, corruption, uncleanness, etc., then you think you shall never overcome. Earthly reason will tell you what you shall lose. Hearken not to that, but stand still in the way that shows them to you. And then strength comes from the Lord, and help, contrary to your expectation. Then you grow up in peace, and no trouble shall move you. Stand still in their power, which brings peace. So Quaker worship is stand still and wait. All sorts of things are going to occur to you. It really can be terribly uncomfortable. Nothing is happening. Not very many people speak, or very often. What am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go? An hour is over, and I'm not different. I haven't, and yet you are different. You've stopped. You've stopped yourself. You've waited. You've waited for what, as Fox says, the only thing that can really help you in that regard. You can help yourselves in a lot of ways, but in terms of religious experience, it's only your own religious experience that's going to help. And if you can't stand still and wait for that, what can you wait for? The bus. All right. Community. If that's the case, why do you need anybody else? George Fox, he said he discovered the living Christ in a field, alone, after he talked to ministers and professors and everybody else, and nobody satisfied him. Everybody had an answer, but it was always like, go to church, do this, these are the rules, that's the world, this is the cosmos, this is your state in it. And he said, no, it doesn't really work for me. And then he had this understanding. Well, that understanding might occur to you anywhere, exactly. But what that does to a person is that interiorness drives you to be with other people who are doing the same thing. It's lonely. George Fox could never, ever be happy or be efficient in what he was as a human being if he just stood in that field or wandered around like a wild, crazy guy in the street saying, you know, the end is near, repent now. Wouldn't work. He needed to say, no, you have the same power that I have. You have God within you. All you have to do is prayer, sing, ritual. No, stand still and wait. So what do friends do? They come together at a convenient time, and they sit and they wait.
That's true.
And now, question and answer period.
Yes, if any, that gets us started, and we'd be very happy to entertain any questions you'd like to direct them to a specific person, or just in general, we'll be very, very happy to. And I will do a little right there. I don't know your name.
Oh, that's okay, Sandy Trainer.
Thanks.
I was wondering, if you're all sitting there, how do you know when your hour is over?
You know, I have to say, we had a service dog as part of our Quaker meeting for quite a few years. His name was Thomas, and when Thomas first came in, he was a little bit of a puppy. He wiggled a little, but it was fine. He settled down. And after, I don't know, 2 or 3 months, Thomas would settle down with the rest of us, just on the floor. And it was uncanny that when an hour had passed, you could hear him just maybe yawn, or just move a leg or something like that, kind of stretch. And we would look at our watches, and my goodness, it was 11 o'clock. And even if it weren't for Thomas, I think we all experience that. After an hour, there's what we call just kind of a rise. You just feel a rise in the worship. There is a person who is, we all take turns being what we call the greeter, and that person will close the worship by shaking the hand of the person to the left. But that job, you have to kind of sense that everybody is finished. And an hour is a good length of time, and there's a sense that we're finished. If someone has just spoken, given a message, you give a little more time for that message to sit in. But it's usually, you just kind of an agreement. We're finished and we're closed. So, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
It's Thomas. Remember Thomas?
When I was growing up in Philadelphia, we would, the meeting would be still typically for the whole hour, and it was it was just very nice for all of us to be still. Now when I go to meetings, well, I don't go anymore, but there would be constant messaging. And so I just don't go anymore because the messaging is so disruptive. Why has Quakerism changed so much?
I don't think it has. You have to worry about both ends of that spectrum, just like it's the easiest and the hardest. One of the hardest things is self-discipline. So you go to a meeting that does not have a lot of self-discipline, you're going to get a lot of messaging, or you're going to get no messaging. Because they all think, oh, it's the silence that's precious.
Right.
But it isn't. It's the waiting, the standing still that's precious. And when you have something to say, and it's clear that you should say it, even if you don't know where it goes or to whom it's addressed, which is usually the case, you get up and you say it. But the balance there is what's hard. I think in contemporary days, in the generation that I grew up in, where Quakerism found a new life in activism, a lot of people have mistaken Quakerism for political, kind of, religious political action, or something like that. And so they feel free to get up and say whatever they think. But I think that if you're really okay as a Quaker, you just weary that out. I mean, you don't take the silence as the thing. You don't take speaking as the thing. You take your discipline as the thing. But I think that if you go to a meeting and there's a lot of chatting, that's because there isn't a lot of self-discipline. Because if one person speaks, for example, we say this in gatherings like weddings and memorial services where a lot of people there are not friends. We say, give silence a chance to come back. Somebody gets up and speaks, they sit down, silence is allowed to wash over that. If it's not a particularly profound or useful thing that's been said, the silence will wash it away. And if it is useful and profound, it's sinking right into those people from whom it's meant. But if you don't leave that silence there, then you're lost. You're tempted to be too much of one thing, or not to speak at all, or to speak too much.
I have two questions. One, I assume then there's no music in your meetings. And my second question is, except for that form of worship, you don't seem to differ much from the Unitarian Universalists.
Oh, we could say a lot about that. Just let me say about I want to say one thing about music. There is no preordained music. But we have plenty of people who come from other traditions, and when they feel moved, they will get up and sing. And we have a piano in our meeting. Not all meetings do, but we do. And sometimes, if they're moved in that direction, they'll go to the piano. But it has to be from within.
Yeah, so some of us really miss singing. We love it. We do it other places and other times, before the worship or after the worship. But it's not a part of the program of the worship. But we do really love singing. We have a book that's full of songs. And we have people that, there's a message given in singing. Oh goodness, I really didn't intend to compare religions. Unitarian versus Quaker, but to me this is a profound difference that I feel. I was raised, my family was Unitarian as I was growing up, and it just didn't grab me. I don't know what to say. Does anybody want to say anything?
Well, just structurally,
Yeah, okay.
the basic structural difference is the Unitarians want to embrace every possible expression of faith. And they, that kind of thing. So they make room and space for every different kind of thing. And then they kind of meet in a communal joining together, which is saying, we affirm all of these. I think for friends have stripped all that away, and they say, you can do this if you want, you can do that if you want, you can be this if you want, you can be that if you want. But